In this video, we're going to have a look at the two new Lumix S series teleconverters. Good morning everyone, Richard Wong here. So today we are going to have a look at the two new Lumix S series teleconverter. We have the 1.4 times teleconverter here, and then also the 2 times teleconverter here. So before we start talk about the build quality and image quality, I just want to show you some quick photo to show you the difference between the not using teleconverter and using the 1.4 and the 2 times teleconverter. Okay, first let's have a look at the photo that I shot using the Lumix S1R with the 70-200 f4 lens at 200mm. So I was about 1 kilometer away from the Sky Tower, which is the tallest building here in New Zealand. And then I shot another photo using the 1.4 times teleconverter attached to the camera and the lens. And finally, this is another photo I shot using the 2 times teleconverter and also at 200mm, which give me the equivalent of 400mm. And because of S1R's 47 megapixel resolution, if I zoom in and look at it at 100% zoom level, I can actually see a lot of detail on the Sky Tower. I can even see the people quite clearly that are walking on top of the Sky Tower. Okay, let's talk about the design and the build quality of the teleconverters first. The build quality of both teleconverters are fantastic. They both feel very strong, very well made. If you hold it on the hand, you can feel how solid it is. When you mount the teleconverter between the body and the lens, and if you try to twist or turn or move the lens or the body, the amount of play is very minimal. Both teleconverters are weather sealed, so as you can probably see or not see, there is a bit of rubber seal around the edges of the teleconverter. So it shouldn't be a problem if you want to take photo using the teleconverter under bad weather condition, no matter it's raining or snowing or there's a bit of dust or sand, it shouldn't be a problem for this teleconverter. So when I first heard about the teleconverter, I was thinking, can I use it with the Lumix 50 1.4? Because if I attach, for example, the 2 times teleconverter on the 15mm 1.4, then that would give me an equivalent of 100 2.8 lens, which is pretty cool. But when I took the teleconverter out of the box, then I look at it and then I immediately noticed that the one side of the teleconverter actually extrude quite a bit, and this is the side that mount onto the lens. So what that means is there's no way I can mount the Lumix 50 1.4 lens onto this teleconverter, because the rear element of the f1.4 50 1.4 is quite extruded to the back. So yeah, physically it wouldn't be able to mount it on that, and also because of that, then you also cannot like stack the teleconverter together, because otherwise you would crush one of the element into the back of the other one. So yeah, definitely you cannot stack them physically. That's not doable. Right now, the only lens that you can use with these two teleconverter is the 70-200 f4 lens, which is this one. But in the near future, there will be more lenses available. The Lumix 70-200 f2.8, I believe, will be released later this year. And looking at the roadmap, there is another super telephoto lens that is coming out next year, which I assume will be compatible with these two teleconverters as well. And because of the extrude element on the teleconverter, so you have to be careful when you mount it onto the camera. But luckily, on the Lumix S1 and S1R, there is an extruded part that in front of the camera. So even if you try to jam it onto the camera the other way around, the bits that's in front of the camera can also protect it and stop it from crushing this front element directly onto the camera sensor. Before we go on and talk about image quality, there's one quick thing I want to talk about first. Is, for example, when you're using it with the 70-200 f4 lens, your maximum focal length will now become 280 when you use it with this 1.4 times teleconverter. But on the other hand, you also lose one stop of maximum aperture. So the maximum aperture is now become from f4 to f5.6, so this is one stop slower. And if you use it with the 2x teleconverter, then the maximum focal length will now change from 200mm to 400mm, so you double the focal length. But on the other hand, you lose 2 stops of light, so the maximum aperture is now from f4 now changed to f8 when you mount this 2x teleconverter onto the body. This is purely just laws of physics. No matter what brand or what camera system you're using, with the 1.4x and 2x teleconverter, you always lose 1 stop and 2 stops of light. Okay, now we can talk about the image quality, and the first thing I want to show you is some photos I shot using the 70-200mm lens at the maximum focal length. So this is 200mm, and I want to show you the center sharpness and the corner sharpness at different aperture. So first, just the 70-200mm lens by itself, no teleconverter, and this is the center sharpness. As you can see, this 70-200mm f4 lens is actually very sharp. So even with the 47 megapixel s1R, and if you check the photo at 200% zoom, even at the maximum aperture f4, the sharpness is already pretty good. When you stop down, you don't actually gain too much image sharpness. And even if we move on and look at the corner, pretty much the same. It's only marginally softer than the center, but even at f4 is already pretty sharp. Next, I attached the 1.4x teleconverter to the lens, and I'm still shooting at the maximum focal length, which is now around 280mm. Because of the 1.4x teleconverter, the maximum aperture is now f5.6. But yeah, look at the center sharpness. Even at the maximum aperture, the image sharpness is still pretty good. And now move on and look at the corner. Again, I think the corner is still pretty sharp even at the maximum aperture. Stop down to f8, definitely improve a little bit, but the difference is not really big at all. And now I attached the 2x teleconverter to the lens. The maximum aperture is now f8. If you look at the center sharpness, I think it's still pretty good. If you compare to the previous photo I shot with the 1.4x teleconverter, I think the photo with the 2x teleconverter is a little bit softer, but then I don't think the difference is too big. Now if you look at the corners, you can see that at f8 at the corner, it is definitely a little bit softer than the previous photo that I shot with the 1.4x teleconverter or no teleconverter. If you stop down to f11, the sharpness is slightly better. We have looked at some individual photos that I shot at different focal length using the teleconverters. And next, I want to show you how does the teleconverter affect the image quality, especially the image sharpness. And I was thinking, okay, how should I do that? Because the thing with the teleconverter is that it changes the overall focal length. So that means when I attach, say, the 1.4x teleconverter to it, it just makes the focal length quite a bit longer. So if I want to make my comparison photo exactly the same, there are two ways I can do it. The first thing is maybe I just shoot, for example, without the teleconverter at 200mm, and then I put the 1.4x teleconverter on, and then I shoot at 140mm, because 140mm times 1.4 would give me pretty much 200mm, and then shoot at 100mm with the 2x teleconverter. So it will give me the total, the equivalent focal length would be identical in the 3 different setups. But this may not be the the best way to compare the photos, because that means I am changing the focal length on the lens. And because when you are changing the focal length, you're also changing the sharpness of the lens itself. For example, normally when you are shooting at the maximum focal length, for example, this one at 200mm, this is normally the softest focal length for this lens. So if I compare that with the 2x teleconverter shoot at 100mm, that doesn't give me a very fair comparison. Because of that, I thought the way I should do the comparison is I keep the focal length on the lens at 200mm. So when I attach the teleconverter onto the camera, then I move the camera away from the subject I'm shooting. So until I got the subject to be pretty much the same size as the original photo I shot without the teleconverter, and I'll do it the same for the 1.4 times and the 2 times teleconverter, so that will allow me to compare it more accurately. So the next thing I thought about is what aperture setting should I use when I'm shooting these comparison photos. So maybe I should just shoot it at f8 without the teleconverter, and also with the 1.4 times teleconverter, and also with the 2 times teleconverter. But I think about it a little bit more, and I feel that it's probably not the correct way to do it, because if I do it when I'm shooting without the teleconverter, I actually stop down the lens by 2 stops, and that would definitely make the output image a little bit sharper than compared to I shoot at maximum aperture. That made me feel that maybe the most fair way to compare the result is just shoot at the maximum aperture. So that means f4 when I don't use a teleconverter, and then f5.6 with the 1.4 times teleconverter, and then f8 with the 2 times teleconverter. So I feel if I shoot it this way, then the comparison photo would be the best way to compare how does the teleconverter affect the image sharpness. Anyway, let me continue and show you the comparison photos. Here are the 3 photos I shot without using the teleconverter, with the 1.4 teleconverter and the 2 times teleconverter. As you can see, the subject in the center of the photo is roughly the same size, because I moved the camera back quite a bit when I attached the teleconverter onto the camera. Now let's look at the center crop of these 3 images, and we are now looking at it at a 400% zoom level, so we zoom in quite a bit. And if you look at the 3 images side by side, you can see that the result from the photo that without using the teleconverter is very similar to the one that used the 1.4 times teleconverter. Even when we are looking at it at the 400% zoom, the difference is still barely noticeable. But if you look at the photo I shot with the 2 times teleconverter, then at the 400% zoom level, then you can see that the details that captured from the 2 times teleconverter photo is quite a bit less compared to the 2 other photos. But remember, we are now zooming and look at it at 400% zoom. So if you zoom out a little bit and you compare it at 100% zoom level, then the difference is not really that noticeable. So next I want to show you some comparison photos to show you whether the teleconverter have any impact on the image quality when you are shooting using S1R's high resolution mode. So the first photo I want to show you is the comparison photo that I shot without any teleconverter. I have normalized the output by downscaling all the high resolution photo back to the same resolution as the normal 47 megapixel photo. If you compare them side by side, you can definitely see that the photo that capture using the high resolution mode definitely capture quite a bit more fine detail compared to the photo that shoot in the normal mode. And another thing you may notice is that even though both photos I shot at the same ISO, I shot at ISO 400, but because the high resolution mode is basically stacking multiple images on top of each other, so the output from the high resolution mode is actually has much less noise and much smoother as well. Next, let's look at the comparison photo that shot using the 1.4 times teleconverter, and just like before, you can see that the photo capture using the high resolution mode definitely can capture quite a bit more fine detail compared to the normal single shot output. And last, let's look at the comparison photo that I shot using the 2 times teleconverter. With these comparison photos, the image shot using the high resolution mode actually doesn't appear to capture more fine detail compared to the normal resolution single shot output. So it probably suggests that with the 2 times teleconverter, it has lowered the output resolution or the sharpness quite a bit, so that even when you are shooting using the high resolution mode, it doesn't actually capture too much more detail compared to the single shot output. And here, let's look at the center crop from the 3 high resolution photo putting side by side, and yeah, you can see that the one without teleconverter and the one with the 1.4 teleconverter, The overall sharpness and amount of fine details capture is very similar. Even when you're looking at 400% zoom, there is really not much different at all. But if you look at the 2x teleconverter output, then you can see that it is definitely a little bit softer than the other two images. The 2 teleconverter doesn't seem to make much impact to the bokeh of the quality of the autofocus area. The bokeh still look pretty nice and pretty smooth with the 1.4 times or the 2 times teleconverter attached to their camera. But while this 2 teleconverter doesn't seem to affect the bokeh much, when I'm going through the photos I shot using the teleconverter and compared to the similar photo I shot without the teleconverter, it seems like the one I shot with the teleconverter does have a little bit more flare compared to the one I shot without the teleconverter. The difference is actually pretty tiny, so I'm not too sure whether it actually matters or not when you are taking photo in real life, but I thought I should mention it anyway. One benefit with the teleconverter that some people may not really be aware of is that it actually increases the maximum magnification of the lens that you're using. For example, with the 70-200 f4 lens, the maximum magnification is actually pretty good. It's at 0.25 times. And this is a photo I shot with this lens at 200mm focal length at the minimum focus distance. And next, let me show you the photo I shot with the 1.4 times teleconverter attached, also at the maximum focal length and at the minimum focus distance. The magnification is quite a bit bigger. And next, I have attached the 2 times teleconverter. Again, I'm shooting at the maximum focal length and also at the minimum focus distance. So you can see that the subject is again bigger in the photo. Here is the side-by-side comparison without the teleconverter, with the 1.4 times teleconverter and also with the 2 times teleconverter. With either of the 2 teleconverter attached, the maximum magnification definitely increased quite a bit. The teleconverter still doesn't really make it a macro lens yet, but if you want to do a bit of close-up photography, then the teleconverter definitely can help you quite a bit. When it comes to the autofocus performance, if you are taking photos under bright sunlight with the S1 now, there is virtually no noticeable difference in terms of the autofocus speed or the overall performance of the autofocus system. Now, when you are shooting indoor or anywhere that's getting darker, then you will notice there's some difference when it comes to the autofocus speed or the reliability. The difference really depends on how dark or how bright the area is when you are taking photos. So the darker the area is, the bigger the difference you notice when you put on the teleconverter, especially the 2 times teleconverter. Oh, another quick thing I want to mention is if you're going to use the teleconverter with the 70-200 f4 lens and it still has the original 1.0 firmware, the original firmware, then you will definitely need to update the firmware first, because otherwise when you turn on the camera with the teleconverter attached to the lens and attached to the camera, then you will see some error message. So yep, definitely need to update the firmware if you see the error message. I think there's no doubt that both the 1.4 times teleconverter and the 2 times teleconverter, they are both very high quality. The image quality and the build quality are both top notch. But with the 1.4 times teleconverter, I think there's very minimal drop in terms of image quality or the performance when using this teleconverter. So because of that, I think this would be the teleconverter that is most suitable for most people. If you do really need the extra reach, then the 2 times teleconverter is also a pretty good choice. But you need to understand that with the 2 times teleconverter, there is definitely some impact in terms of the image quality and also the autofocus performance, especially when you are shooting photos under low light condition. If you are happy with the trade-off, then the 2 times teleconverter is also a pretty good choice as well. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you have any comments about these 2 teleconverter or this video, then feel free to leave a comment below so that I can have more discussion with you. Thank you again for watching this video, and hopefully I'll see you again in my next video.